Stop for a moment. Before you check your phone, before you remember your problems, before the world tells you who you are supposed to be, there is one single moment that determines everything. The first thought after you wake up. Most people think their future is shaped by hard work, luck, or circumstances. But that is not where creation begins. It begins in consciousness. It begins in assumption. It begins in the quiet, barely noticeable whisper that crosses your mind the instant you open your eyes. That thought is not harmless. It is not casual. It is not insignificant. It is a decision. And that decision sets the direction of your entire day. The day becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes your life. And your life becomes your future. If you truly understood the power of that first thought, you would guard it like treasure. Because in that fragile, drowsy state between sleep and waking, you are not reacting to the world. You are creating it. Today, you will understand how to use that moment deliberately. And once you do, your mornings and your future will never be the same. The moment you awaken each morning, you are not merely rising from sleep, you are stepping into creation. There is a delicate interval between dreaming and full awareness where the mind is soft, impressionable, and unguarded. In that quiet space, before logic fully takes control, before memory reminds you of yesterday, a single thought appears. That thought is not trivial. It is not accidental. It is a seed, and every seed, once planted, must grow. Most people underestimate this moment. They wake up and immediately think of responsibilities, unfinished tasks, problems, or worries. They revisit yesterday's disappointments and unknowingly replant them into today. Then they wonder why life feels repetitive, why circumstances seem unchanged, why the same emotions return. What they fail to see is that they are sowing the same seed every morning. The first thought carries extraordinary power because it is received by the deeper mind without resistance. In that drowsy state, you are closer to the creative source within you. The analytical guard is down. Doubt has not yet assembled its arguments. Whatever you accept in that instant sinks deeply into consciousness. And consciousness, impressed with an idea, expresses it. This is law. If your first thought is, today will be stressful, you have already impressed stress upon the creative field of your awareness. The day will then arrange itself around that assumption, not because the world is against you, but because your inner acceptance silently directs perception, reaction, and behavior. You will notice what confirms your thought. You will respond in ways that reinforce it. And by evening, you will say, I knew it. Yes, you knew it because you planted it. But imagine awakening differently. Imagine opening your eyes and before moving a muscle, claiming, today unfolds perfectly for me, not as a wish, not as forced positivity, but as a calm, steady knowing. Feel it real. Feel the ease of it. Feel the quiet confidence that something good is already in motion. That feeling is the watering of the seed. A seed does not struggle to become a tree. It does not strain or worry about how it will grow. It simply contains the blueprint within itself. Once planted in fertile soil, growth is automatic. In the same way, your first thought contains the blueprint of your day. Once impressed upon consciousness, the unfolding begins naturally. You do not need to manipulate every event. You do not need to control every person. The outer world responds to your inner state. When the state changes, the reflection changes. The first thought is powerful because it establishes identity. When you wake and think, I am overwhelmed, you step into the identity of someone burdened. When you wake and think, I am capable and supported, you step into a different version of yourself. Identity determines perception. Perception determines action. Action produces experience. So the seed is not just about events. It is about who you are being. Understand this clearly. You are not at the mercy of random thinking. You can choose the first thought deliberately. It may require discipline at first. The mind may try to drift back to familiar patterns. But you are not required to accept every thought that appears. You are the gardener. You decide what is planted. Before sleeping, you can even prepare the soil, decide what you will think upon waking, pre-select the seed. Tell yourself, when I wake, I will remember that I am blessed. This intention carries through the night, and often the first thought will follow the last dominant assumption before sleep. Creation is not an accident. It is continuity of state. Many people attempt to change their lives by altering external behavior while ignoring the morning seed. But behavior grows from belief, and belief is strengthened through repetition. The first thought repeated daily becomes a dominant belief. A dominant belief becomes your lived reality. If you want a different future, do not wait for dramatic opportunities. Do not wait for circumstances to shift. Begin with the smallest, most overlooked moment, the first thought. Guard it, shape it, plan deliberately. In time, you will notice subtle differences. The day feels lighter, reactions soften, opportunities appear more frequently, coincidences align. What has truly changed is not the world itself, but your inner orientation toward it. And the world, being a mirror, faithfully reflects that orientation. Never again dismiss the first thought as insignificant. It is the starting point of experience. It is the silent architect of mood, action, and outcome. It is the creative seed from which your hours grow, and your hours become days, and your days become years. Tomorrow morning, when awareness returns, remember you are holding a seed. Choose wisely, because whatever you plant in that sacred moment will, without fail, seek expression. Everything you experience in the outer world first existed as an inner assumption before it became a visible fact. It was an invisible agreement you made within yourself. You may not remember making that agreement consciously, but through repetition of thought and feeling, you accepted something as true. And once accepted, it began to solidify. Assumption is not mere thinking. It is thinking sustained until it feels natural. It is an idea entertained so often that it becomes identity. When something feels natural to you, you no longer question it. You do not hope for it. You do not strive for it. You simply expect it. And what you expect consistently begins to appear consistently. Most people live by unconscious assumptions. They assume life is difficult. They assume success is rare. They assume relationships bring pain. They assume money is hard to earn. These are not objective truths. They are accepted beliefs reinforced by past experiences. But the outer experiences were themselves shaped by earlier assumptions. It becomes a cycle. Assumption creates experience, and experience strengthens assumption. Yet this cycle can be interrupted. The moment you realize that assumption shapes reality, you regain authority. You understand that circumstances are not fixed structures imposed upon you. They are reflections, hardened forms of once, fluid inner states. When you assume you are overlooked, you begin to notice evidence of being ignored. When you assume you are valued, the same world reveals appreciation. It is not that the world changed first. Your inner lens changed, and the world rearranged to match it. The key lies in feeling. Words alone do not create. Mechanical affirmations without conviction remain on the surface. But when an assumption carries emotional weight, when it feels true, it penetrates deeply into consciousness. That depth is what gives it creative power. If you assume with quiet certainty, things always work out for me, and you repeat this not as a desperate chant, but as a calm knowing, something shifts. Challenges may still arise, but your response changes. You interpret events differently. You act with confidence instead of fear. And because your actions shift, outcomes shift. Eventually, the assumption feels justified. It appears proven. In truth, it was producing the proof all along. This is why changing reality requires changing identity. You cannot assume wealth while secretly identifying as someone who struggles. You cannot assume love while identifying as unworthy. The deeper self concept always wins. Assumption must align with who you believe yourself to be. So the true work is internal. Instead of fighting circumstances, redefine yourself. If you want success, Assume you are the kind of person for whom success is normal. If you want peace, assume you are someone who remains steady regardless of external noise. If you want opportunity, assume life favors you. Do not look for immediate validation. Hardened beliefs were not formed in a day, and they do not dissolve instantly. Persistence is essential. Every time you return to your chosen assumption, you reinforce it. Every time you refuse to react from the old identity, you weaken it. Reality is more fluid than it appears. What feels solid now was once just an idea. Consider your current self-image. At some point in your life, you began to think of yourself in a certain way. Through repetition, that thought became familiar. Familiarity became comfort. Comfort became identity. Identity shaped your world. But identity is not permanent. It is assumed. And what is assumed can be reassumed differently. You are not bound by yesterday's concept of yourself. You can choose a new one. Choose deliberately. Choose boldly. But above all, choose consistently. When the outer world contradicts your new assumption, do not retreat. Understand that reality reflects dominant belief, not temporary doubt. Stay aligned internally, and the external must catch up. Assumption does not beg circumstances to change. It declares them changed internally first. It lives from the end rather than hoping for the beginning. When you assume the wish fulfilled, not as fantasy but as fact, you collapse the distance between desire and experience. This is not about ignoring challenges. It is about redefining their meaning. If you assume you are resilient, obstacles become stepping stones. If you assume you are guided, confusion becomes redirection. If you assume you are favored, delays become preparation. The world mirrors your accepted truth. So ask yourself, what have I been assuming about my life? About my abilities? About my future? Whatever answer arises is currently shaping your experience. If you desire a different future, do not wait for permission. Assume it now. Let the assumption settle into feeling. Let the feeling become natural. Let the naturalness become identity. And as identity shifts, reality will follow, because assumption, sustained and felt, inevitably hardens into fact. There is a profound difference between wanting something and knowing it is already yours. Wanting implies separation. It implies distance between you and the desire. It says, I do not have this yet. But creation does not respond to want. It responds to identity. It responds to the feeling of possession. To feel it as already done is to move beyond hope and step into certainty. It is to shift from longing for a future event to accepting an accomplished reality within. The outer world may not yet display the evidence, but inwardly, you have accepted the result. This acceptance is not imagination as fantasy. It is imagination as experience. When you feel something as already done, your nervous system responds as though it is true. Your posture shifts. Your tone changes. Your decisions align. The body cannot distinguish between a vividly accepted inner state and a physical event. And because your body and behavior shift, your outer life begins to reorganize around that new state. Most people delay feeling good until circumstances improve. They say, when I get the job, then I'll feel secure. When I meet the right person, then I'll feel loved. When money arrives, then I'll feel abundant. But this reverses the creative order. The feeling must come first. Security is not the result of the job. It is the state that attracts the job. Love is not created by the relationship. It is the state that draws the relationship. Abundance is not produced by money. It is the consciousness that allows money to flow. Feeling it as already done means embodying the emotional state now. Imagine the relief you would feel if the problem were solved. Imagine the calm confidence you would carry if the goal were achieved. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of knowing everything worked out. That emotional signature is what you must claim before the evidence appears. It does not require dramatic emotion. It is not forced excitement. In fact, the most powerful state is naturalness. When something feels ordinary, expected, and obvious, it is deeply impressed upon consciousness. Think of how you feel about something you already possess. You do not constantly think about it. You do not chase it. You simply know it is there. That knowing is the creative key. If you desire success, do not strain to visualize applause or trophies. Instead, feel the inner stability of someone who is already successful. If you desire harmony, do not obsess over fixing others. Feel the inner peace of someone whose life flows smoothly. The outer scene is secondary. The inner conviction is primary. At first, the mind may resist. It may present evidence of lack. It may remind you of past disappointments. But those are echoes of previous states. They are not permanent truths. You are not required to argue with them. Simply return to the feeling of completion. Completion is powerful because it ends struggle. When you feel something is done, you stop grasping. You stop forcing. You stop chasing signs. You move through the day differently, with ease instead of desperation. And paradoxically, that ease allows the desire to materialize. Desperation pushes away. Certainty draws in. This is why persistence matters. You are not trying to convince the world. You are stabilizing a new inner state. The more often you return to the feeling of it being done, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it no longer feels like practice. It feels like truth. And once it feels like truth, it expresses itself. Consider how fear works. If you truly believe something bad will happen, your body reacts immediately. Your heart rate changes. Your mood shifts. Even before anything occurs, the assumption influences your state. The same principle applies to fulfillment. If you truly accept that something wonderful is already secured, your entire being adjusts. The outer world follows the dominant state of being. Feeling it as already done is not denial of current conditions. It is refusal to let current conditions dictate identity. You are choosing the end state now and living from it rather than toward it. When you wake in the morning, instead of thinking about what you must achieve, feel the satisfaction of it already accomplished. Walk through your day as someone who has already received. Speak from that confidence. Decide from that assurance. Rest in that calm certainty. Soon, what once felt imagined will feel inevitable. You are not waiting for reality to grant permission. You are granting reality direction. The feeling of completion is the instruction. So do not ask, when will it happen? Ask instead, can I feel it done now? Because the moment you genuinely can, the process has already begun. Feel it real. Feel it settled. Feel it complete. And let the world catch up. There is a subtle but life-altering difference between waking up to become something and waking up as something. Most people rise each morning with a sense of pursuit. They believe they must work toward confidence, strive toward success, move toward love, push toward abundance. Their entire day is structured around becoming. And in that very effort, they reinforce the idea that they are not yet. But creation does not respond to who you are trying to be. It responds to who you are being. When you wake to become successful, you affirm that success is separate from you. When you wake to become confident, you silently admit that confidence is absent. The mind does not create from longing. It creates from identity. And identity is assumed in the present tense. To wake as means you begin the day already aligned with the version of yourself you once thought was in the future. Instead of saying, today I will try to be productive, you wake with the quiet recognition, I am disciplined and focused. Instead of thinking, I hope I feel confident in that meeting, you wake as someone who is naturally self-assured. Instead of wishing for better circumstances, you rise with the calm understanding that life supports you. This shift may appear small, but it transforms everything. When you wake as the person you desire to become, your behavior adjusts effortlessly. You do not force yourself to act differently. You act consistently with your assumed identity. A confident person does not rehearse courage before every conversation. They simply speak. A secure person does not overanalyze every interaction. They move with stability. An abundant-minded person does not panic at temporary lack. They trust flow. Identity governs reaction. Most struggles come not from circumstances, but from divided self-concept. You want success, yet you identify as someone who struggles. You desire love, yet you see yourself as unworthy. You seek freedom, yet you define yourself by limitation. The outer world mirrors the dominant definition. So the true work is not chasing outcomes, it is redefining self. Morning is the most powerful time to do this because identity is most fluid when you first awaken. In that soft, quiet space, before yesterday's narrative fully returns, you can choose who you are. You are not required to carry the old version forward. If yesterday you felt insecure, you do not need to wake as the same person. If last year you struggled financially, you are not obligated to continue that identity. The past is only powerful if you resurrect it through memory and acceptance. To wake as is to claim authorship. It means you decide, this is who I am now, not arrogantly, not forcefully, but calmly, firmly, without apology. You do not wait for external validation. You do not require evidence first. Evidence follows identity, not the other way around. Think of an actor stepping into a role. The moment they assume the character fully, their voice, posture, and reactions shift. They do not try to behave like the character. They embody it. In the same way, when you wake as the version of yourself you choose, embodiment replaces effort. Effort implies resistance. Embodiment implies alignment. If you desire peace, wake as someone who is naturally composed. Feel the steadiness in your breathing. If you desire prosperity, wake as someone who expects opportunity. Feel the quiet certainty of support. If you desire meaningful relationships, wake as someone who is already valued. Feel the warmth of that acceptance. At first, the mind may question you. It may present memories that contradict your new claim. But those memories are remnants of an old self concept. You are not denying them. You are outgrowing them. Consistency transforms identity. Each morning you wake as the new version. You strengthen it. Each day you respond from that state, you solidify it. Over time, what once felt intentional becomes automatic. And when it becomes automatic, it becomes reality. The world does not argue with a stable self-concept. It reflects it. Waking to become keeps you chasing. Waking as places you in possession. One feels like effort. The other feels like certainty. Tomorrow morning, when awareness returns, pause. Before you remember what you lack, decide who you are. Choose deliberately. Choose clearly. Rise not as someone trying to improve their life. Rise as someone whose life is already aligned. Because you do not create by striving toward a future identity. You create by assuming it now and living from it the moment you open your eyes. Every day is not separate from your future. It is building it. And every day begins with a state. Before actions unfold, before conversations happen, before opportunities appear or disappear, there is an inner position you occupy. That position is your state of consciousness. And the state you enter in the morning quietly determines the direction your life begins to move. A state is more than a mood. It is more than a passing emotion. It is the lens through which you interpret reality. It is the identity you operate from. It is the invisible atmosphere surrounding your thoughts, reactions, and expectations. When you wake up, you step into a state, either unconsciously or deliberately. And from that state, you think, speak, decide, and act. Most people wake up and immediately inherit yesterday's state. If yesterday was stressful, they wake in tension. If yesterday felt disappointing, they wake in discouragement. They assume continuity without realizing they have a choice. But the morning is not a continuation by default. It is a reset point. The state you choose in the morning becomes the filter for the entire day. If you wake in frustration, neutral events will seem irritating. If you wake in doubt, opportunities will appear risky. If you wake in lack, you will notice what is missing. The outer world has not changed. Your interpretation has. And interpretation shapes response. Response shapes consequence. Now consider the opposite. If you wake in gratitude, small things feel meaningful. If you wake in confidence, Challenges feel manageable. If you wake in certainty, delays feel temporary rather than permanent. The same events can unfold, yet the outcomes differ because the state differs. State precedes circumstance. You do not react to life objectively. You react according to your inner positioning. And repeated positioning becomes direction. Direction, sustained over weeks and months, becomes destiny. This is why the morning is sacred. It is the point at which you set direction. Just as a plane adjusts its course slightly at takeoff to determine its final destination, your morning state sets the trajectory for where your day, and eventually your life, will land. If you begin scattered, the day unfolds scattered. If you begin grounded, the day stabilizes. If you begin empowered, the day aligns. The powerful truth is this: you can choose your state. You are not required to accept the first emotion that arises. You are not obligated to relive yesterday. You can pause upon waking and decide, today I operate from clarity. You can choose, today I remain steady. You can declare inwardly, today unfolds in my favor. This is not denial of challenges. It is preselection of response. When you consciously select a state in the morning, you are deciding how you will interpret events before they occur. And because interpretation shapes behavior, behavior influences results. You become proactive instead of reactive. The future is not created in grand dramatic moments. It is shaped in small daily orientations. A slight shift in state, repeated consistently, leads to a completely different life over time. Just as a ship adjusting its compass by a few degrees ends up in a different continent, your consistent morning state leads you into a different reality. Many people attempt to change their lives by altering goals without altering state. They write plans, set intentions, and create strategies. But if they wake each day feeling unworthy, doubtful, or anxious, those plans struggle to manifest. The inner atmosphere contradicts the outer effort. Change the state, and direction changes naturally. You cannot remain in a sustained state of confidence and continue making self-sabotaging decisions. You cannot remain in a sustained state of abundance and consistently act from fear. State governs choice. Choice governs experience. Morning is when your influence is strongest because the mind has not yet been cluttered by noise. In that quiet beginning, you can intentionally step into the version of yourself that aligns with your desired future. Once you stabilize that state, the day becomes an extension of it. And when days repeat, patterns form. Patterns become habits. Habits become character. Character shapes destiny. So do not underestimate the power of how you begin. Before speaking, choose your state. Before moving, claim your direction. Before remembering yesterday, decide who you are today. Because your future is not a distant event waiting ahead. It is the accumulation of daily states, and the morning is where those states are selected. Choose deliberately, stabilize intentionally, and watch how your direction, slowly, steadily, inevitably, transforms. Now you understand. Your future is not waiting somewhere ahead of you. It is not hidden in fate. It is not controlled by circumstances. It is born each morning in the silence of your first awareness. That first thought is a command. It is the blueprint of the day. And repeated daily, it becomes the blueprint of your destiny. If you wake in fear, you build fear. If you wake in doubt, you reinforce doubt. But if you wake in certainty, in assumption, in the quiet knowing that it is already done, then life has no choice but to reflect that conviction. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to struggle. You do not need to chase outcomes. You only need to choose your state. Tomorrow morning, before moving, before speaking, before remembering yesterday, decide who you are. Decide how the day unfolds. Decide that it is already in your favor. And then rise, not as someone hoping for a better future, but as someone who has already claimed it. Because the first thought after waking does not predict your future. It creates it. If this message resonated with you, carry it into tomorrow morning. Guard that first thought. Shape it. Own it. If you found value here, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to reclaim their mornings and their future. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing awareness. And most importantly, thank you for choosing to create consciously. I'll see you in the next message.